You notice it most in the morning. That dull, heavy ache in your thighs when you swing your legs over the edge of the bed. Maybe it is a sudden realization that your grip is not what it used to be. When you try to twist the lid off a new jar of coffee. Or perhaps climbing the stairs in your own home suddenly feels like you are wading through waist-deep water. At first, it seems small. You write it off as just another part of getting older. You rest a little longer, you take the steps a little slower, but then you start to notice a quiet shrinkage in your arms, a flattening of the muscles in your legs, and a persistent feeling of weakness that never really goes away no matter how much sleep you get. The standard medical advice is almost always the same. Eat more protein. Have a couple of eggs for breakfast. Boil a piece of chicken. Force down a protein shake. So, you do. You force it down, doing exactly what you were told, expecting to feel stronger. But instead, the heavy legs remain. The weakness persists. And on top of it all, you just feel full, sluggish, artificially stuffed, and bloated. There is a very specific biological reason for this, and it has nothing to do with you not trying hard enough. It has to do with a mechanical failure inside the aging digestive system that almost nobody talks about. Before we look at the exact biological process causing this, and the incredibly common, inexpensive fruit that changes the entire equation, take a second and let me know down in the comments. How old are you? Where are you watching from? And what is the one symptom of muscle fatigue you notice most often during your day? It helps to know we are not going through these physical changes alone. Here is what actually happens inside a body that has crossed its 70th year. When you eat an egg, you are consuming a dense, complex matrix of proteins. In a 20-year-old body, the stomach acts like a furnace. It produces high concentrations of hydrochloric acid and powerful enzymes that aggressively dismantle that egg, breaking those complex proteins down into tiny, usable building blocks called amino acids. Those amino acids are then flushed into the bloodstream, where they travel to your legs, your arms, and your core, physically rebuilding the muscle tissue you break down just by walking around. But as we age, that internal furnace cools down. By the time we reach our 70s, stomach acid production drops significantly. The medical term for this is hypochlorhydria, and it is incredibly common. When your stomach acid is low, that egg you forced yourself to eat does not unravel. It just sits there. The protein remains locked inside a complex structure your body can no longer break apart. It eventually passes through your digestive tract largely unused, fermenting and causing discomfort. You are eating the building materials, but your body has lost the tools to unpack them. The muscles continue to waste away simply because the raw materials are locked behind a digestive wall. You are starving for amino acids while your stomach is full of protein. This is where a shift in your daily routine can make a profound difference. And it does not involve buying expensive supplements or choking down more meat. It involves a very specific, incredibly cheap fruit that grows in warm climates, but sits quietly in almost every local grocery store. Papaya. Now, it is easy to dismiss a piece of fruit. We are conditioned to think of fruit as just sugar and water. But we need to look at what the biological compounds inside a papaya actually do to human tissue, and why it is uniquely suited for an older digestive tract. Papaya contains a naturally occurring proteolytic enzyme called papain. Proteolytic simply means protein destroying. When you introduce papain into a digestive system that is struggling to process food, it acts like a biological pair of scissors. It does not require high stomach acid to work. It simply enters the stomach and begins aggressively snipping the tight bonds of the proteins you have eaten, unraveling them effortlessly. When you eat an egg, or a piece of fish, or even a handful of nuts, and you pair it with this fruit, you are essentially pre-digesting the food. You are doing the mechanical work your stomach is currently struggling to do. Because the protein is suddenly being broken down properly, the appearance of usable amino acids in your bloodstream spikes rapidly. Some clinical observations suggest that when proteins are paired with active proteolytic enzymes in an older digestive tract, the absorption rate of those amino acids increases exponentially. It is not that the fruit itself contains the muscle-building protein. It is that the fruit unlocks the protein you are already eating, flooding your system with the materials it has been begging for. Think of it as improving traffic flow inside very tiny blood vessels. Suddenly, the roadblocks are gone, and the building supplies are arriving at the construction site right on time. Arthur, a 74-year-old retired machinist, experienced this exact shift. He was not trying to become a bodybuilder. He was simply tired of having to rock back and forth 3 times just to build the momentum to push himself up from his favorite armchair. His grip was weakening to the point where holding his heavier gardening tools made his forearms ache for days. He was eating eggs every morning, exactly as advised, but felt heavy and slow. He started slicing a small amount of fresh papaya and eating it alongside his morning meal. He did not change anything else. About 3 weeks later, he noticed the morning stiffness in his calves was fading. The dull ache in his thighs when he stood up was sharply reduced. He could grip his tools without his hands trembling. The protein he had been eating all along was finally making it to his muscles. This is not a dramatic, overnight transformation. It is a slow, quiet repair process. A 2022 study published in the Journal of Clinical Nutrition examined how older adults process proteins. The researchers observed that introducing natural digestive enzymes directly alongside a protein source significantly altered how much of that protein was actually utilized for muscle repair rather than being discarded as waste. The research is still evolving, and results vary depending on medication use, sleep, and diet, but the biological mechanism is undeniable. If you are going to use this method, the timing and preparation matter immensely. You do not need to eat a massive amount. Just half a cup of cubed papaya is enough. But you must eat it slightly before, or exactly during, your protein-rich meal. If you eat the fruit on an empty stomach hours away from a meal, the enzymes have no protein to act upon. They will simply pass through your system. You want those biological scissors in your stomach at the exact moment the protein arrives. Most people ignore this part. They eat a heavy breakfast, feel bloated, and then eat some fruit hours later hoping it will help them digest. That is usually when the cycle of indigestion starts. The fruit needs to be the primer. Before we look at the specific ripeness of the fruit, that holds the most power and how this process affects the deep inflammation in your joints, let's pause and connect a few biological dots. We tend to think of our body parts in isolation. We think of the stomach as one machine, the muscles as another, and the brain as something else entirely. But they are all part of the same closed loop. When your body struggles to break down food, it diverts a massive amount of internal energy toward your digestive tract trying to force the issue. This leaves you feeling exhausted. That chronic indigestion causes low-grade inflammation in your gut. That inflammation leaks into your bloodstream, traveling directly to your muscle tissue and joints. Inflamed muscles are tight, sore, and highly resistant to growth or repair. Furthermore, when your digestion is sluggish and uncomfortable, your sleep quality degrades. You might not wake up entirely, but your deep, restorative sleep phases are interrupted by the subtle distress in your gut. And deep sleep is the exact window when your brain releases the hormones required to rebuild muscle tissue. Poor digestion leads to systemic inflammation. Systemic inflammation leads to poor sleep. Poor sleep equals zero muscle repair. By introducing a natural enzyme to handle the heavy lifting of digestion, you quiet the gut. When you quiet the gut, you lower the inflammation. When the inflammation drops, you sleep deeper. The entire system resets. If this biological approach makes sense to you so far, and you appreciate health information that respects your lived experience, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It tells us to keep researching and bringing these grounded physiological realities to light. Now, there is a specific aspect of this fruit that is commonly discarded, yet it holds a surprising amount of biological power. When most people buy a papaya, they look for the softest, sweetest, most orange fruit they can find. They slice it open, immediately scrape out the dark, slightly peppery seeds, throw them in the trash, and eat only the sugary flesh. From a physiological standpoint, this is a mistake. The concentration of papain, the specific enzyme responsible for dismantling dense proteins, is actually highest when the fruit is slightly underripe. A papaya that still has a bit of green on the skin and is firm to the touch will contain a much more aggressive profile of proteolytic enzymes than one that is overly soft and saturated with natural sugars. More importantly, the seeds themselves are essentially biological gold mines. They have a sharp, slightly bitter, peppery taste. They contain not only high levels of digestive enzymes, but also unique compounds that actively clear out cellular debris in the lower intestine. You do not need to eat a bowl of them, but keeping just a half teaspoon of those seeds, crushing them slightly with the back of a spoon, and swallowing them alongside the flesh of the fruit provides a powerful secondary wave of digestive support. It works deep in the gut to ensure that the amino acids being broken down are actually absorbed through the intestinal wall rather than just floating past. It is about root support. It is about fixing the foundation of how your body processes fuel rather than just masking the symptom of fatigue with an extra cup of coffee. This approach honors the reality of an aging body. We cannot force the stomach to produce the acid of a 20-year-old, but we can intelligently bypass that limitation by borrowing the digestive power of the natural world. When you wake up tomorrow morning and you feel that familiar stiffness in your legs, remember that your body is not out of options. You might try adjusting your routine. Keep a slightly firm papaya in your kitchen. Slice a small bowl of it, leave a few of the seeds intact. Eat it slowly, right before you have your morning eggs or your oatmeal, or whatever protein source you prefer. Pay attention to how your stomach feels 30 minutes later. Notice the lack of heaviness. Over the next few weeks, pay attention to how your legs feel when you stand up from a chair. Notice if your grip feels just a fraction more secure. Small biological improvements compound over time. Aging changes the body. It changes the rules of digestion, and it changes how we build strength, but it does not completely shut down repair. The body still responds to support even later in life, provided we give it the right tools. Take a moment and let me know in the comments below which part of this digestive process surprised you the most. What is the one daily symptom you struggle with right now? And who is one person in your life you want to share this information with? Thank you for your time, your curiosity, and for taking your health seriously. Take care of yourself this week.